Welcome to Seeing Green Solutions for Our Daily Lives, the podcast where we spotlight the brands, ideas, and people making it easier to live sustainably every day. Today's episode is part of our Spotlight series, a deep dive into one of our Seeing Green Solutionists of the day. And now, today's solution.
Welcome to this deep dive, which is also episode 30 of the Seeing Green podcast. Today's episode is part of the Seeing Green Spotlight series, where we take a closer look at the Seeing Green Solutionist of the day and the real solutions they bring to help us be healthier and greener in our daily lives. And if you enjoy what you hear today, please do take a moment to subscribe wherever you access your audio content and follow us at Seeing Green Eco across all social media channels. It really helps. So today we are diving back into a topic that's always popular, sustainable food, specifically the plant-based category. You might remember past deep dives on Next Level Veggie Grill, Thrive Market, Harmless Harvest, even Banana. But today we're putting the spotlight on a company called Prime Roots. They call themselves a new school deli brand.
Yeah, and their mission is pretty ambitious. Prime Roots is really aiming to, as they put it, clean up the deli aisle. And that aisle, maybe surprisingly to some, is actually one of the biggest categories in the whole grocery store. They were apparently founded by, a generation that grew up really questioning ingredients, reading labels, and feeling kind of let down by what was available.
Right, and their whole philosophy seems key here. They argue that people really deserve options that are transparent, healthier, and definitely more sustainable. But, and this is important, without having to sacrifice the taste or the tradition of those classic deli items we all know.
Exactly. They're trying to reinvent the everyday staples, not niche foods, but the things people eat all the time. The idea is that everyone, not just vegans or vegetarians, they're quite clear on that can take part in climate-friendly eating. So they're really going after the meat eater, the flexitarian.
Yeah.
They kind of avoid specific labels because they want this to be mainstream for everyone.
Okay, let's unpack that. Specifics. When you say deli classics, what exactly is Prime Roots making? What's on the shelf, or behind the counter, rather?
So their initial focus is really squarely on those items you expect to find sliced fresh at the deli counter. Think things like cracked pepper turkey-inspired, smoked turkey-inspired, Italian-style salami-inspired, also Black Forest ham-inspired, and smoked ham-inspired clean plant protein.
So basically the whole range of typical cold cuts you'd find.
Pretty much. And the sources mentioned they're also tackling some tougher items too, like sliced applewood, smoked bacon-inspired, and sliced pepperoni-inspired. Though for now, those are mostly available through restaurants and food service partners, not quite in retail yet. But the promise across the board is delivering those textures and flavors people really expect, just with much cleaner labels.
Okay, but why the deli aisle specifically? I mean, we talk about environmental impact a lot, but what's the sort of consumer pain point they're hitting there, health-wise?
Well, it's not just the known health concerns around eating a lot of processed red meat, which are significant, obviously. The really specific issue in the deli aisle is how common preservatives and chemicals are. The founders explicitly said they were fed up with settling for preservative-filled meats or dirty options. That's a direct quote from one source. And, that whole industry has faced big recalls, and there's just this growing awareness about nitrates. Yeah. And it feels like a category that's overdue for a shakeup.
One of the tricky things for consumers trying to eat clean in that aisle is those hidden nitrates, right? Can you explain that loophole, the one Prime Roots is trying to close?
Yeah, certainly. So lots of companies, responding to consumers, took synthetic sodium nitrate off their labels, which sounds good. But the sort of industry trick, if you will, is to substitute it with things like celery salt or celery powder, because celery is naturally high in nitrates. So when it's added, it still acts as a preservative. It cures the meat, stabilizes the color. But legally, they don't have to list the chemical sodium nitrate on the ingredient list.
That feels like a technicality that doesn't really solve the health concern for the person actually eating it.
Exactly. It doesn't. And Prime Roots makes a commitment to avoid all of that. No synthetic preservatives, no chemical additives, and importantly, no using that celery salt loophole for curing. They've really designed it to be a one-to-one swap. Same taste, same texture, which is also why it works commercially, Deli operators don't need new slicers or anything. They just swap out the log of meat. Makes it easy to adopt.
Okay, now we get to the really interesting part, the core of this, I think, the technology. Prime Roots isn't using pea protein isolates or soy like so many others. They're built entirely on something called Koji mycelium. What is this, and why is it such a differentiator in the alt protein world?
Right. Koji is actually the Japanese name for a specific type of fungus, or, more accurately, mycelium, Aspergillus oryzae. And it's not new tech at all. It's ancient, really. It's been used in Asian cuisine for centuries. If you've ever had traditional soy sauce or sake or miso, you've had Koji. It's the starter culture that drives that amazing fermentation and gives that deep, savory, umami flavor.
Okay, so it's a fungus, but you stress it's mycelium, not a mushroom. What's the difference there, and why does that matter for making something feel like deli meat?
That distinction is absolutely crucial. Okay, think of, say, an apple tree. The mushroom is like the apple, it's the fruiting body, the part that pops up seasonally. Koji, the mycelium, that's like the root system of the fungus underground. And that root system is structurally completely different. The sources explain that Koji's structure is made of these fine, thread-like filaments called hyphae. And naturally, these threads have basically the same diameter and size as animal muscle fibers.
Ah, so that's the key structurally. It's not just about flavor, it's the actual physical structure, the geometry.
Precisely. Because that root structure is so inherently similar to muscle fibers, prime roots can use it to replicate the marbling, the grain, the texture, and that really critical bite you expect from animal-based deli meats. The end product has a similar density and structural integrity as real meat. And they can achieve this without relying heavily on external binders, gums, starches, methylcellulose things, other all-proteins often used to kind of mimic structure that isn't naturally there.
Which leads right into the clean label advantage, I guess. If the structure is just part of the Koji itself, they can avoid a lot of heavy processing.
Absolutely. Koji is a whole food protein source. It's naturally high in protein. It's got fiber, vitamins, minerals. So unlike methods that rely on isolates, those stripped down protein powders, prime roots isn't using those. They also avoid gluten, soy, additives, and heavy chemical processing steps. Their ingredient lists are generally short, things you can pronounce. They strongly maintain they are not creating an ultra-processed food.
Okay, so we understand the how using this fascinating Koji mycelium, but let's talk about the why. What's the actual impact here for people's health and for the planet? Maybe start with the health side, especially given what you said about processed meats.
Right. Well, the nutritional profile is strong. It's protein-rich, good source of fiber, zero cholesterol. That's all positive. But maybe the biggest health benefit is what they eliminate, those nitrates and preservatives we talked about. And we really can't overstate the public health angle here. The World Health Organization, the WHO, classifies processed meats as a Group 1 carcinogen. That puts it in the same risk category as things like smoking tobacco or asbestos exposure in terms of cancer risk.
Wow, that's incredibly stark language from the WHO. So tackling that risk, but in a familiar product like deli meat that people eat so often, that feels like a huge potential impact.
Huge. And beyond just removing the negatives, there's evidence suggesting the fungi-based protein itself might have functional benefits. There's research, like a study cited from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition back in 2020, that indicated fungi-based protein might actually support muscle building even better than some animal proteins, like milk protein.
And the sources you looked at had some really striking data points, especially concerning kids, which, when you think about school lunches and sandwiches, makes this super relevant for parents.
It really does. The data mentioned is compelling. Things like children who swap out processed meats for plant-based options, showing something like 52% better cognitive performance scores and a 47% reduction in inflammatory markers. That's significant. Even more dramatically, some experts suggest that completely eliminating processed meats from a child's diet could potentially reduce their lifetime cancer risk by as much as 45%. It just speaks volumes to the urgency of providing cleaner but still familiar and appealing options.
Okay, let's shift gears to the environment now. We know meat production, and traditional cold cuts fall into that, is notoriously heavy on resources, high environmental footprint, which means any viable replacement here could scale up impact really quickly, right? How does this Koji technology stack up against conventional meat?
The difference is, well, it's dramatic. And it's not just their claim. It's quantified by a third-party life cycle assessment, an LCA, done by Boundless Impact. When you compare producing meat from Koji versus conventional animal agriculture, Prime Roots uses vastly fewer resources across the board.
Give us those numbers, but maybe put them in context a bit for us.
Okay, so the Koji-based meats use 92% less water. Just think about that. If conventional meat needs, say, 100 gallons of water, the Koji equivalent needs only 8 gallons. They also use 91% less land, which is just critical, with increasing pressure on farmland globally.
That's a massive saving on resources. What about the climate impact? Emissions?
The LCA showed they produce 91% fewer carbon emissions compared to conventional meat. So basically saving 91% of the CO2 per kilogram. They also achieve 89% lower water eutrophication, that's the nutrient runoff into rivers and lakes that causes those harmful algal blooms and dead zones. So the whole process, really from farm to the final product, is just inherently much, much lighter on the planet.
That level of reduction is seriously impressive. But, if these products just end up in a few expensive specialty stores, that global environmental impact stays pretty small, right? It sort of defeats the purpose of system change. Does their technology allow them to scale, to actually achieve that bigger impact?
And that's exactly why their strategy matters so much. By choosing to focus on the deli aisle, which is just a universally popular category. It goes into sandwiches everywhere, cafeterias, schools, grab-and-go meals. They're maximizing their potential for that system-level change. They're targeting where the volume is, the everyday consumption points.
Okay, let's talk about how they're positioned in the market then. It sounds like they're trying to build more than just a product line, maybe a movement around rethinking everyday food. And targeting flexitarians, omnivores, essentially saying, hey, you don't have to give up that turkey sandwich you love, just swap the turkey.
That's exactly it. And the market validation seems to suggest it's working. Apparently, in blind taste tests against the leading conventional meat brands, over 50% of actual meat eaters either preferred the Prime Roots version or said they'd be willing to switch. So they seem to be hitting that crucial taste and texture mark needed to break into the mainstream.
And crucially, the sources suggest they're not just stealing customers from other plant-based brands, which can sometimes happen in this category where brands just swap existing vegan customers. They seem to actually be growing the overall deli category.
Yeah, some retail partners have apparently reported Prime Roots driving something like 20% growth in their total deli sales, which really suggests they are pulling in that mainstream omnivore crowd like they intended. Their core philosophy seems pretty simple, really. Keep the food familiar, make it taste great, undeniably delicious, and then actively remove the dirty parts, both the health risks associated with processed meats and the heavy environmental costs of producing them.
It really brings us back to that central, maybe provocative question they seem to be asking. Why is a product that's cleaner for people and lighter on the planet called the alternative? They're kind of suggesting maybe this should be the new conventional going forward.
It's definitely a challenge to the status quo. And it feels like it's about empowerment, too. The message to you, the consumer, is that making a sustainable change doesn't have to mean some radical diet overhaul or striving for perfection. It can be about making those small, everyday swaps, like the sandwich meat you buy week in, week out, swapping it for an option that's significantly healthier for you, much lighter on the planet, and you don't even have to sacrifice the taste you like.
That is a powerful takeaway. Prime Roots, using ancient Koji technology, essentially making better cold cuts possible, delivering that taste and texture we expect, but without the environmental baggage or the health compromises that have really dogged the traditional deli aisle for so long. To learn more about Prime Roots, including where to find their products, visit them at primeroots.com. Interested in finding more brands and innovators dedicated to creating a greener, more sustainable world. You can subscribe to the Seeing Green podcast wherever you access podcasts. You also can visit our website and join the Seeing Green community. Sign up at www.seeinggreen.eco and follow us at Seeing Green Eco across social media channels. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Seeing Green Spotlight Series podcast. Until next time.